Florence, 1494. The city is alive with art, wealth, and scandal. Michelangelo is chiseling marble, Leonardo da Vinci is sketching flying machines, and Machiavelli is already writing notes about how politicians can't be trusted. This is the Italy the world knows, the birthplace of the Renaissance. But for centuries, there wasn't an Italy. There were city-states, kingdoms, and principalities. Venice had its gondolas, Florence its bankers, Rome its popes, and Naples. Well, Naples had great food and a lot of chaos. So how did this chaotic collection of states become the Italy we know today, a nation of opera, pizza, Ferrari, fascism, and financial crises? This is the story of how Italy happened. For most of its history, Italy wasn't a country, it was a battleground. In the Middle Ages, the Italian peninsula was carved up between powerful city-states and foreign empires. The north was dominated by Milan, Florence, and Venice, rich trading hubs. The south was under the Kingdom of Naples. And smack in the middle sat the Papal States, where the Pope ruled as both spiritual leader and secular monarch. The Renaissance put Italy at the center of the world. Art, science, literature, it all flourished. But while Michelangelo was painting the Sistine Chapel, French and Spanish armies were marching across the peninsula, turning Italy into Europe's favorite playground for war. By the 18th century, Italy was basically a patchwork of territories ruled by outsiders. Austria, Spain, and France all had pieces. Italians dreamed of unity, but for centuries, it seemed impossible. Then came the 19th century. Europe was changing. Revolutions, nationalism, new ideas of liberty. In Italy, whispers of Risorgimento resurgence spread. The dream of a unified Italy was born. At first, it looked hopeless. Revolts were crushed, intellectuals were exiled, and regional rulers clung to power. But three men would eventually change everything: Giuseppe Mazzini, Giuseppe Garibaldi, and Count Camillo di Cavour. Mazzini was the idealist. He believed in democracy and the unity of all Italians. He wrote, he organized, he dreamed. Unfortunately, dreams alone don't topple empires. Garibaldi was the fighter. With his ragtag army of red-shirted volunteers, he fought battles across South America and Italy. He became a legend, part warrior, part pirate, part action hero. And then there was Cavour, the brains, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. He was cunning, pragmatic, and not above cutting shady deals with foreign powers. Think of him as Italy's Machiavelli in a suit. Together, these three shaped the path to unity. The turning point came in the 1850s and 60s. Cavour allied with France, fought Austria, and expanded Piedmont's territory. Garibaldi launched his famous expedition of the Thousand, conquering southern Italy with a few hundred volunteers. Against all odds, he succeeded. In 1861, King Victor Emmanuel II was declared the first king of a united Italy. After centuries of division, Italy was finally on the map as a single country. Well, almost. Rome and Venice were still missing. Rome was under the Pope's control, protected by French troops. But by 1870, even Rome fell into Italian hands. The dream of Risorgimento was complete. At least on paper, because here's the thing, unification didn't magically erase centuries of differences. The North was industrializing, wealthy, and looking toward Europe. The South remained poor, rural, and resentful. The gap between North and South, the Questione Meridionale, became a wound that still hasn't fully healed. And then there was the mafia. Rooted in Sicily, it grew stronger in the chaos of unification. What began as local protection rackets evolved into a powerful criminal network. Italy had gained a flag, but it had also inherited organized crime. The late 19th century was a rough ride. Italy tried to act like a great power, launching colonial adventures in Africa. The results were embarrassing. In 1896, Italy invaded Ethiopia and was crushed at the Battle of Adwa. It was the first time an African army had defeated a European colonial power. Italy's pride was wounded, and so was its army. At home, things weren't much better. Poverty drove millions of Italians to emigrate. Between 1880 and 1920, more than 4 million Italians moved to the United States alone. They built lives abroad while back home, Italy struggled to modernize. Then came World War I. Italy started neutral, but joined the Allies in 1915. Lured by promises of land. The war was brutal. Battles in the Alps and along the Isonzo River claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. Italy technically won in 1918, but the peace treaties gave them less than they expected. Italians called it a mutilated victory. Disillusionment spread. And out of that disillusionment marched a man named Benito Mussolini. Mussolini started as a socialist journalist, but soon invented something new: fascism. In 1922, his black shirts marched on Rome, and King Victor Emmanuel III handed him power. Just like that, democracy was gone. Mussolini promised to restore Roman glory. He censored the press, crushed opposition, and built a cult of personality. Statues, parades, propaganda films, Mussolini was everywhere. He wore military uniforms, gave dramatic speeches, and made Italians chant, Il Duce, Il Duce. At first, he delivered some stability. Trains famously ran on time, though historians argue that's mostly a myth. But Mussolini's ambitions soon dragged Italy into disaster. He invaded Ethiopia in 1935, using chemical weapons and brutal tactics. The world condemned it, but Mussolini basked in the conquest. Then he allied with Hitler. Big mistake. When World War II broke out, Mussolini joined Germany. Italy's army, poorly prepared and badly equipped, stumbled from defeat to defeat. In Greece, in North Africa, in Russia, the Italian campaigns were disasters. By 1943, the Allies invaded Sicily, and Mussolini was overthrown by his own people. But it wasn't over. The Germans rescued him, set him up as a puppet leader in northern Italy, and the country fell into civil war. Partisans fought fascists, neighbors turned on neighbors. In 1945, Mussolini was captured and executed by partisans. His body was hung upside down in Milan, a brutal symbol of Italy's rejection of fascism. Post-war Italy was chaotic. The monarchy was abolished in 1946, replaced by a republic. The economy was in ruins. But thanks to American aid and sheer resilience, Italy bounced back. The 1950s and 60s became the Italian economic miracle. Fiat cars rolled off assembly lines. Fashion houses like Gucci and Armani conquered the world, and films from Fellini and Rossellini dazzled audiences. Italy became glamorous, a land of scooters, sunglasses, and style. But beneath the glamour, cracks remained. Politics was unstable, with governments changing almost yearly. The Cold War turned Italy into a battleground of influence, with powerful communist parties and CIA-backed operations clashing in the shadows. And then came the years of lead, the 1970s. A wave of political violence swept Italy. Far-left terrorists like the Red Brigades carried out kidnappings and assassinations, while far-right extremists planted bombs. In 1978, Prime Minister Aldo Moro was kidnapped and killed. Bombings in Bologna and Milan killed hundreds. Democracy survived, but barely. The mafia, meanwhile, flourished. Cosa Nostra in Sicily, Camorra in Naples, and 'Ndrangheta in Calabria. They grew into global criminal empires. Drug trafficking, corruption, assassinations. Judges, politicians, and journalists were murdered for challenging them. In the 1990s, anti-mafia crusaders Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino were assassinated in massive car bomb attacks. Their deaths shocked Italy, but also galvanized public anger, sparking a stronger fight against organized crime. And then there was Silvio Berlusconi, a billionaire media tycoon turned politician. He dominated Italian politics for decades. Charismatic, scandal-ridden, and seemingly untouchable. Berlusconi was Italy's Trump before Trump. Corruption trials, sex scandals, and yet he kept winning elections. For many, Berlusconi symbolized both Italy's flair and its dysfunction. The 21st century hasn't been easy. The Eurozone crisis hit Italy hard. Mountains of debt, sluggish growth, and high unemployment plagued the economy. Young Italians once again immigrated in large numbers. Meanwhile, migration from Africa and the Middle East turned Italy into a frontline state in Europe's refugee crisis. Politics grew more polarized, with populist parties gaining ground. Yet, through it all, Italy endures. Today, it is a land of contradictions, ancient ruins and high-speed trains, mafia trials and Michelin-starred restaurants, chaotic politics and timeless beauty. So, how did Italy happen? It happened through art and war, faith and fanaticism, genius and corruption. It happened because Italians dreamed of Rome, fought for unity, survived dictatorship, and still argue loudly over dinner. Italy is not just pizza, pasta, and gondolas. It is also inquisitions, invasions, mafia wars, and Mussolini's ego trip, a nation forever torn between its glorious past and its messy present. But hey, at least the food is still world-class. The wine flows freely, and when all else fails, Italians know how to throw a party. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more stories about how nations happened and why their past still shapes their present.